Judicator, John. Hey, man, what's up? What's going on? Tell me a little bit about when the band first started in 2012.
Well, so Judicator began in 2012. 2 years prior to that, in 2010, the co-founder and I, Alicia Cordisco, met at a Blind Guardian concert in Tempe, Arizona. And that was kind of funny because I showed up to the venue very early. She did as well, because she knew members in the band Seven Kingdoms at the time who was touring with Blind Guardian. And it was just her and I sitting outside in front of the venue.
Uh-huh.
And at a certain point, Seven Kingdoms arrives, and Alicia goes to hang out with them. And she turns and says, "Do you want to come hang out with us?" Whoa. At the time, I was only like 20 years old. So I was so happy. But yeah, we went backstage. We hung out with Seven Kingdoms. We saw Blind Guardian sound check. It was all spellbinding. But
Right.
then eventually we got kicked out.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but her and I exchanged information, and a couple of years later, she reached out because we had been Facebook friends
Right.
at that time, and she said, "Hey, I have an album that I've written. Would you want to do a little project and sing on it with me?" And hell yeah! So we released "King of Rome." That got a lot of good publicity in our local circles and whatnot. So we
Right.
figured let's do it again. We did it again, and we just kept getting better and better reactions, and so we just kept on building and making Judicator bigger and better.
Cool, cool. Now, looking over your catalog and stuff like that, I usually go to a thing called Metal Archives, and they rate your album and stuff like that. It seems like from album to album, you guys just kept on getting better and better with the reviews. I mean, the first one was good too, which was King of Rome, which was 87 out of 100. That's awesome, right? But then everyone after that was in the 90s, you know? So
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Metal Archives is kind of interesting because it's not comprehensive, but
Right.
for its circles, it is kind of a nice indicator of where like true metalheads, I guess you could
Right.
say, where
Uh-huh.
the sentiment lies. But on Metal Archives, the Majesty of Decay, our last album on
Yeah.
Metal Archives, has like a 76%,
Right.
but it is hands down across the board our most critically acclaimed album. It got 9 out of 10 reviews, 10 out of 10 reviews. It
Right.
was in year-end lists. So,
Good.
Metal Archives is great in some
Right.
ways, but
Uh-huh.
it's not comprehensive.
Yeah. But it does help me with information about members, releases, regardless of the rating they gave you. It still helps me out with my interviews, learning about each album, each EP, each single, each band member. Covers the album, so it's helpful. In that aspect.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I love Metal Archives. I follow it fairly closely, and the forums are great. It's terrific.
Hey, Chad, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yeah. What's up?
What's going on, man? We're just talking about past albums from Judicator and stuff like that right now. And, we talked a little bit about King of Rome. And tell me about the second album that came out. I don't have a date on that one, but when did that come out? And tell me a little information about that.
2013 is when Sleepy Plessow came out, and that is an interesting concept album because primarily I would say it's about Frederick the Great, but it also covers his father and sort of the rise to prominence of the state of Prussia.
Uh-huh.
So it's a very sprawling epic, I would say. And that's kind of when we started to feel a little more confident as a project. And
Right.
it's the success of Sleepy Plessow that really cemented, okay, this is not just a one and done kind of project. We need to actually turn this into a band. And so
Right.
after Sleepy Plessow, we committed a lot more time and resources to polishing our sound, our songwriting, everything. And so that's where, with our third album, At the Expense of Humanity, is, I would say, really where we took off and
Right.
started to become what you know and love as Judicator today.
Cool, cool, cool. Chad, were you an original member of the band?
No, I'm actually one of the newer guys, but I have been around helping out with stuff behind the scenes a little bit, almost since the beginning. I did have some little backing vocal parts on King of Rome on the first album, and I programmed the drum tracks on Sleepy Plessow. So I've been around. John and I have been in bands together since before Judicator was formed. So we've kind of been working together on various things over the years.
Right. Yeah. What United States is kind of lacking in the power metal genre and stuff like that. Europe's the place to go, and definitely with all, like you said, Blind Guardian, all these other bands are like a lot of power metal over there. Why do you think United States is lacking in that genre?
Chad?
You got stuff.
I think that the audience for it in the U.S. And North America in general, I think, is just a little less enthusiastic about more melodic kinds of metal, at least in my experience. I think there's just a lot more people that want to hear it in Europe, across the pond. So, but I think that the audiences here have been growing kind of steadily, although kind of slowly over the years.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean, you see the success of Prog Power and Mad with Power, Hyperspace Metal Festival. There are a lot of sort of middle tier, I guess you would say, festivals that are starting to pop up, and lower middle tier, Mile High Power Fest.
Right.
So I think the appetite is definitely growing, like Chad said, but it's nowhere near what it is in Europe or South America or even Japan.
Cool. Would you lump in like Viking metal with power metal?
I don't think so, because like Amon Amarth, I think is what you might be referring to, or Ensiferum.
Right.
I know like Amon Amarth does great here. They don't have any problems.
Cool. Now getting to the new album. Tell me a little bit about. I noticed the latest video has sax in it. Is there any musical instrument that you wouldn't use?
I would not write anything off. I think where I go, and Chad may have thoughts on this too, but my piece is, for example, there was a song on the last album, The Majesty of Decay, called Metamorphosis. And I was writing that song and I reached a sort of fork in the road where I wanted to do a saxophone solo that was very like ethereal, celestial, and really open and spacey. And in my mind, in my imagination, it works. No problems. Like, hell yes. But there's always that reservation. Like, is this going too far? Like, are people going to check out? Are they going to laugh? Are they going to think it's dumb or whatever? And my philosophy is basically just follow your heart. Like, who gives a shit?
Right.
Some random, who cares what some random person on like Reddit or Discord or Facebook thinks? At the end of the day, you are going home with a product, a work of art that you need to be able to live with, and that you need to be able to go back and think, I'm proud of what I did and I'm happy with what I did. So, I think it's like when you're on an airplane, they say, if the air drops, take care of yourself first and then take care of the person next to you. So it's the same thing creatively. You need to take care of yourself first and then take care of your audience, because if your audience is a true fans and followers, they're going to love what you're doing and what you're exploring.
Right.
And if they're not, then we'll always have the old albums. We'll always try to represent them in shows. It's okay. Yeah.
Well, and I think that when it comes to adding new or kind of unique instruments, when it comes to metal, I think for the people that don't necessarily care for it, I think there's just as many people that find it refreshing. And I mean, this kind of metal has been getting made for decades.
Right. At
a certain point, you got to start exploring other options and other sounds to keep things fresh. So I'm usually a fan when I hear kind of new things like that, even from bands that have been around forever that are just trying to change things up a little bit.
Right. I find it refreshing. Cool. I thought it was pretty cool. I liked it.
I think as long as it comes from a place that is sincere and not contrived, then everything ends up working out. So, we had saxophone on the last album. We have one saxophone on this album, and it's not contrived. Like, it
Right.
really was a genuine from the heart idea. And so if next album ends up having no weird instruments,
Right.
that's fine. That's fine too.
Cool. Well, a lot of bands are doing that symphony stuff, like Metallica, Kiss. They all did that. And then you had like legendary people like Jethro Tull playing a flute.
Yeah.
So like maybe next time a flute will come into one of your songs.
Never say never.
Pretty cool. So when you all got together, were you friends in the band, or was there auditions, or how'd that work?
Well, so I'll provide some framework, and then I'd love if Chad could chime in. So the aforementioned co-founder of the band, Alicia Cordisco, her and I formed it. It was originally basically it was her and I. It was basically our rodeo.
Right.
And we had surrounding band members who kind of came and went. Alicia left the band in 2020. And so it was basically myself, Big Boss, our bassist, and Jordan Elsess. I mean, we had people who had been with the band for a while,
right.
But at that juncture in the band's history, some people ended up dropping off, and it ended up being just myself and Big Boss. So I had, an opportunity, I guess, to sort of recreate and rebuild the band from the ground up in a way that I wanted it to be. So I wanted it to be not revolving door of members. I wanted like a stable band. And so I focused more on people who I had a long standing rapport with, people I had worked with before, people who I knew and could trust. And Chad, like he mentioned, is somebody that I've worked with and known for a long time.
Right.
Yeah. And being that John and I have known each other for so long, and like I said, I had just like little bits where I contributed things here and there over the years. And we had already written music together in our previous band from like 15 years ago. So we knew that we worked well together. And there's something to be said when a band is just kind of one or two main people for so long. It can kind of be hard to try and fit a bunch of people into that bubble,
right?
And then keep the ball rolling. So far, I think we've been doing a pretty good job of that. And like Dayton, our other guitar player, he was also in the band with John and I years ago. So it's almost kind of like we just reformed our old band in a way, but yeah, no, now that we have more of a stable lineup and we're all pretty close together, whereas previous lineups were spread across the country, I think we're in a much better place now. At least from an outsider's perspective, I'm still kind of the new guy. We've been working together for a couple of years now with me actually in the band, but my perspective before joining, it seems like we're definitely more solid and more cohesive as a full unit now.
Yeah, I would say so much attention and consideration has been put into the lineup as a methodical choice that I feel pretty darn good about the potential for this being a long-standing lineup.
Right. Okay. Now, is Judicator a studio band or a touring band?
I would say we are sort of a hybrid. I would say first and foremost, we are a studio band,
right,
but we are very interested in performing at festivals or maybe a show here or a show there. This is just where we are at right now is we're okay playing like 3 or 4 times per year. We don't need or want or maybe even necessarily have the bandwidth to go out and tour. The nature of touring these days is so interesting anyway. I mean, you really have to be cut out for it, I feel. And it's not always the right investment. If I had a nickel for every time I've seen a band go out and do a tour.
Right.
It's a US tour,
Uh-huh.
but they're performing in front of like 30 people per night.
Yeah.
And it's DIY, and just Chad and I have done that.
Right.
And I'm not interested in it. Chad has toured on a higher level than I have. So he might have deeper insight, but from my perspective, I'm okay if we just play 2 festivals or 3 festivals per year, a show here, a show there.
Uh-huh. Cool.
Yeah, just the thing with touring is, like John said, it's very hard work. It's a big investment and big risk a lot of the time. And a lot of times it ends up not being worth it, which is why we've kind of found ourselves like we're doing these like festival dates, 2 or 3 times a year, and we're maximizing. We're getting only a couple of shows, but we're playing to a few hundred people each time versus a few hundred for the entire tour. So at this point, that's where we're at, and maybe in the future we'll maybe explore doing something different if it seems right. But for now, I think this is really working for us. So,
is there merchandise available?
Yeah, we have a Bandcamp page, which if you just Google it, you can easily find and navigate. And we have T-shirts, we have CDs, we have vinyl. I think that's in low supply, though. That goes through Prosthetic Records.
Right.
Yeah. And then otherwise, you can find us on Spotify. Wherever you find music, we're there.
Cool. Now, the album don't come out till March 28th. What are you guys hoping for once the releases drops?
Well, it coincides with our debut European performance at Epic Fest in Roskilde, Denmark. So we're stoked, over the moon excited about performing for the first time in Europe. And yeah, the album comes out a week prior to that. We've had some good publicity, and I just hope that this can reach as many people as possible.
Cool. I noticed a lot of bands lately. I've been doing a lot of interviews lately, and a lot of bands only drop singles now. What's your feeling on that? Because they tell me people don't have a good, attention span, and so that every 3 months they put out a single, and at the very end they'll put out a multicolored vinyl or different colored vinyls. This way, people get the album at the end, but they get singles for almost a year. What's your feeling about that?
I think it's kind of a cool idea, and it makes sense from a social media and like algorithm standpoint. It's very hard to keep people's attention. Like you said, attention spans are non-existent these days. So if you're only putting out, an album once every couple of years, people are only paying attention to you once every couple of years. But if you're constantly putting stuff out, people are going to be listening nonstop. It becomes difficult, though, when you're in a band like we are, where we put a lot of thought and effort into making an album that's a kind of a cohesive idea. That's kind of hard to produce, 1 song or 2 songs at a time.
Right.
And I have a few bands and artists that I like that do the whole release a single or an EP every few months. Right. And so I think that there's merit in both approaches, but it kind of depends on what you're really trying to achieve with your music or your art. For us, I don't think that kind of approach would work, just because of the way that we prefer to write and produce the music and the songs and the albums and everything. So
yeah. For me, I approach it from, it's like I wouldn't write music that I don't myself enjoy listening to. Right. And I wouldn't package my music in a way that I don't prefer to ingest it and process it, So for me, the way I listen to music primarily, I'm excited when I know that Blind Guardian is coming out with a new album or something. Right. And so that's kind of the rhythm that I prefer to participate in and propagate, more than anything. That isn't to say we don't release singles or EPs. Right. We're going to have a bunch of singles coming out this year, trickling, but general rule of thumb I would say is we like to do an album, you know.
Do you feel you need a major label to make it in the music industry?
That's an interesting thing because we were on Prosthetic Records for the previous two albums.
Right.
And the whole time we were with Prosthetic, I was taking notes. I was paying attention. What are they doing? What are they not doing?
Yeah.
And, you know, so we concluded our contract with them before this album. And with Concord, the new album that's coming out,
right.
we were in talks with two labels more seriously about a deal, and it just didn't quite tip over into being worth it.
Right.
At a certain point, it's just more worth it to shut up and do it yourself, you know.
Yeah.
We're doing everything right that we should.
Right.
Yeah. Chad, what do you think?
Well, I've worked with multiple labels throughout my career, if you want to call it that. And I've always come back to the same realization, and that's that you're kind of signing away a lot of stuff to work with labels that you don't, a lot of times you don't see return on it. And a lot of labels these days, they kind of have their darling bands that they kind of will do anything for. And then a lot of their lower tier bands on their rosters tend to get kind of steamrolled. So you really have to put in a lot of work to make the label work for you.
Right.
And even then, sometimes it doesn't work out. Right. So I would argue that for most people, a label, maybe it's a good thing to experience so that you know how the inner workings go. And I mean, there can be benefits. Labels have connections to people.
Right.
But if you're just able to foster your own connections and networking, and if you're able to manage your money and stuff properly, I really think that labels are starting to become obsolete.
Yeah,
at
I
this
think
point.
so too. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You know, when you put out the Concord, is that coming out on vinyl too?
Eventually, I think, right? Right now, it's not in the budget to print a bunch of vinyl. So I think for the first little bit, we're just going to see how we do with streaming and CDs. But vinyl is kind of one of our priorities to look into as soon as it's viable for us.
Cool. John, what's the feeling like when someone asks for your autograph?
It is interesting because, like I said, we don't perform that often. So whenever we do perform, it's like normal life. And then it's like, oh, all of a sudden, yeah, somebody wants to take a picture with you or have an autograph. And so I've noticed it always kind of really takes me by surprise.
Right.
But it's great. I love talking with followers and fans and trying to connect with them and give them whatever they might be looking for in the experience.
Cool. How about you, Chad?
Well, it's always super humbling because who am I? I'm just a guy, you know? Right. And yeah, like John said, we don't really get out in front of people very often. So whenever we do, it's kind of like, whoa, people care. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, always super humbling, and it's always great to meet people that are fans and who I didn't know existed prior to that moment.
How did you guys hook up with Shauna from O'Donnell Media?
She came recommended to me by somebody whose opinion I respect in the industry, Mary. Oh man, her last name was Zimmer for so many years. I don't know
Mary
her name.
Zima.
Mary Zima. Now,
okay.
Yeah, I adore her. I think she's terrific. She's a phenomenally hardworking and talented person. And I've known her a long time. And yeah, she came recommended to me by Mary.
Cool. When you were working on the album and you got to Blood Meridian, 8 minutes and 14 seconds, what went through your mind?
Sorry, what was the question? When we were writing?
Yeah, the last song, Blood Meridian, 8 minutes and 14 seconds. When you saw how long that song is, was there any thing going through your mind?
No, I say that because with Concord, we kind of tried, because the Majesty of Decay was such a big album.
Right.
One thing that I wanted out of Concord was to have like more 4-5 minute songs. I wanted it to be a bit more of a brisk experience. But when it came to Blood Meridian, I was like, oh man, this is getting a little bit long and the song ain't done yet. Like it can go on longer. I didn't know how long it was going to be. But I felt, like if all the other songs are relatively short,
Right.
then let's do a Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. Let's do a longer song on the album. But yeah, I think the song is segmented such that you don't ever get too comfortable. I think it's a really pleasant song, and it leaves you with just the biggest smile on your face.
Cool.
Because the way it ends is really a hard left turn.
You working on new material already?
We are laying the groundwork for new material. Something for me is I don't ever like to step in the same river twice or whatever. And so we are, I don't want to say too much right now, but we are working on a new arrangement for how the music is made.
Right.
Next album that is going to be, I think, very refreshing and new. And I think it will be very well received personally.
Chad,
and it,
go ahead.
Oh, I don't know if Chad had anything else cryptic to offer to that.
No, I think you pretty much covered that.
Yeah.
You guys like making the videos?
I love making the videos. I went to, I got my bachelor's degree in TV and cinema production. And so I have some contacts in that industry who I'm very grateful and humbled that we've had a good rapport even all these years. And yeah, Cade Baker at Enigma 3 in particular, he's somebody I'm very blessed to have been long-term friends with. And yeah, every time we have the opportunity to make a video, I am 10 out of 10 down. It's one of my favorite things about being in a band, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, it's a lot of work usually, but the payoff is like just being able to see the finished product and all the work we put into those videos is really awesome. So,
how can fans get in touch with you?
I would say Google us or look us up on whatever social media platform of choice. Wherever you look, we're probably there. Yeah, so
you can also go to judicatormetal.com and that'll pull up all of we got a link tree with all of our stuff on there. So
cool. Chad, what are your dreams for this album that comes out this month?
Well, I would just really love to see the band grow a little bit from it. I used to be in a band called Helium Prime, and that band is still going. They were on hiatus for a little bit. I left the band a few years back, but we always had a pretty decent number of people listening on Spotify, and our YouTube subscribers were. Because the subscriber base was pretty substantial. I would love to see Judicator get up to those numbers and beyond. So I'm, just getting the album out there, getting people to listen to it, getting the audience growth is really what I'm looking at right now.
Cool. How about you, John?
I look at the opportunities presented by our debut show in Europe at Epic Fest. I view that with a lot of optimism because it's going to be a great networking opportunity. It's going to be an opportunity to show a lot of metal fans in Europe who we are, what we do, and why it matters. So my real big hopes are that Epic Fest is a rousing success, and that will lead to more opportunities to go across the pond to Europe in the future.
Well, you guys, Chad and John, thanks for the interview. I appreciate it. Everybody support Concord, the new album that comes out March 28th. Check out the band, check out their videos, and congratulations once again. Would you like to say anything to the fans out there?
Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and definitely check out Concord, our new album, our 7th full-length album due out March 28th.
How about you, Chad?
Keep rocking. We'll see you guys out there.
Thanks a lot, man. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brian.